All right, so you might be wondering how we're going to get from this to this. And I'm about to show you. I think, we got a lot of the pieces in place already. We got this idea, notion of a circle. Let's come back to that. And we're going to, instead of maybe creating a circle, let's just create a whole pendulum. And so we'll say create, maybe we'll keep these. Why don't we just keep those? We'll say create pendulum. And we'll define this as an arrow function. And, let's think about what we're going to want. We're going to want a lot of these same things, right? We're going to want a, I think I'm going to go back to, I think maybe in an earlier video, I was doing a center object. And my bad here, we're going to say return, and we're going to return this whole object. That's what my editor was kind of complaining about there. We're going to have a center, and the center is going to be at canvas width over 2, and say maybe 300 to start with, right? We're going to have a size, just as we did before. And I'll just start it at 200. And we're going to have this thing similar to this wave height, right? But it's going to be this line length, right? And so these are going to, each one of these is rotating kind of around a center that's defined by this line. So that distance we're going to call swing radius. So I'll say swing radius, and swing radius, I'm going to give it, let's call it like 300. I think I'll give it a color. Kind of go back to that pinkish color. And let's just start with that, right? So we're going to just make the circle. And so that should make a pendulum. And what I could do is say, let pendulum. Now, I think I actually want to store this angle on the pendulum. So we'll put this angle in here. And instead of having it be a variable declaration, it'll be a property of this object. So we'll have an angle and a bunch of other stuff. But for now, we'll just leave it like that. So this pendulum is going to have this center. We don't need this anymore. We don't need that. But I think we do need this draw a circle. And so what we'll do is we'll say, what we'll do is we'll have a draw line. And we'll have a draw circle. And we'll also have a draw pendulum that will both draw the circle and draw the line. And we'll call that in here. So instead of this line here, we're now going to go back to draw pendulum, and we're going to pass in this pendulum. We're going to create this pendulum in here. So we'll say pendulum equals create pendulum. And I don't think create pendulum right now is not taking in any values. So we're just going to get a pendulum back, and then we're going to draw it. And let's just see what happens if we do that. Nothing. Can now read properties undefined of color at draw circle. So, right, we didn't pass anything in. So here we're going to pass in the pendulum. And instead of circle, right, this will be pendulum. Pendulum.color, pendulum.x, pendulum.y, pendulum.size. And now we're going to get undefined with line. Oh no, what did we get here? Undefined cannot color at draw circle at draw pendulum. So draw circle. Oh, again, we need to pass in the pendulum. So you see something that you'll see a lot in code where you sort of pass these values around. Now we could just have access to that from out here, but oopsie daisy. Ellipse is expecting number for parameter number 1. So pendulum.x is no longer a thing. I have to say pendulum.center.x, pendulum.center.y. And now we get our circle. That's cool. So we got our circle. Let's make that line now happen. We'll say stroke 255. And we're going to say line from pendulum dot center dot x, pendulum dot center dot y. So that's going to go from the center of this pendulum, and I'm actually going to put it before the circle, so the circle draws on top of it. But we need to get pendulum.center.x to, and I think what we're going to want to have is a line start. So this will be some coordinates. XY coordinates, and these XY coordinates will be canvas width over 2. And we can start it anywhere we want, but I'm just going to say 100 for now. Now, let's see. Let's put a comma there. And we got some problems. Cannot read X at draw line, line 24. Pendulum.center.x is definitely a thing. Huh. Oh, right. This should be just line. And then this should be line start dot x. Oh, sorry, pendulum dot line start dot x and y. Cool. So we got our line. Maybe we'll move this pendulum down just a little bit. Or maybe I'll just make it a little smaller. Cool. So now we got this pendulum. Now, what we need to do is we need to move it. And we could try something here where we go, let's see, I'm just going to move this down like that. We can see our swing radius is 300, so it should stay on the page. You know what? I'll just make this line start. Let's make this be more like that. And there we go. So now we've got this swing radius of 200, and we can do what we've already learned, right? Update pendulum. And we're going to pass in the pendulum here. And we're going to say pendulum pendulum.x equals. So this is going to be the sine of an angle times pendulum.swing radius plus And you know what? Let's make an extra value here. So as our center moves, remember we had that issue previously. We want to have an origin. So we'll add pendulum dot origin dot x, because the pendulum dot center dot x is going to be moving, but we want to refer to the pendulum dot origin dot x. That's going to be this right here. So, or should that be this? That's an interesting question. Let's take a look at that. Let's see what happens. So pendulum.center.y is going to be the cosine of this angle, and this will be origin.y. Yeah, I think that's right. Except I think what's going to happen is it's going to rotate around actually this point. Let's take a look at it. So let's see. Yeah, I think we want to get that line start. Come to think of it, that's a no-brainer. So we're going to be at the line start. Pendulum dot line start dot x, and line start dot y. Okay, let's see what happens if we increment this angle and we update our pendulum right in here. So we're going to say update pendulum, pass in the pendulum and the angle. Oh no, we're gonna update the angle's now on the pendulum, which is good. So what we can do is we can say, just pass in the pendulum, and we'll say pendulum dot angle plus equals 0.01, and this will be pendulum dot angle. This will be pendulum dot angle. And look at that, we're getting this motion. We go all the way around. Pretty nice. But not a pendulum. In order to get this pendulum, what we need to do is go to a there's a website that is useful for stuff like this. And there's a formula here that describes what we need to do in order to keep this pendulum from going all the way around. What we want to do is we want to increase the inertia as it gets higher. And it's actually pretty straightforward. We need to add some more properties onto our pendulum, and let's just do that right off the bat. So we're gonna want to have a couple of things. We'll set a gravity value, which is going to help with our simulation. So that'll keep the pendulum moving kind of downish, right? We're going to have a damping value, which is going to keep the pendulum from going all the way around. And we're going to have, let's go ahead and I'm going to set this angle to a slightly different, we'll just go pi over 2 because we're making this in P5, so we should have pi. When you notice sometimes I use sine. We could also say capital M math.sine, which would mean it's coming from JavaScript. This particular version of sine is coming from P5, and the same with pi. Now, in addition to this, we're going to have acceleration, which will initialize to 0, and velocity, which will initialize to 0. So just as we did with Mario, we're going to add we're going to increment the acceleration and add that to velocity. And that should pretty much do it. Let's see what we get here. We're going to, when we update our pendulum now, we're going to add a few more things. And we could even we could even move this angle into its own code. So we could say like update pendulum position and update pendulum angle. Really like a matter in some ways of taste, but I like to keep things separate where possible, right? So we just take we're just handling this polar to Cartesian coordinate system shift, and here in this update pendulum angle, we can handle the actual math. And again, this comes from here, where what we're going to do is we're going to increase the acceleration by multiplying the sine of this angle times -1 times the gravity over the size. Gravity over the size. Yeah, -1 times the gravity over the size times the sine. So that's going to be our new angle. Let's see what that looks like in JavaScript. That looks like this. We'll say pendulum.acceleration equals -1, right? There's our -1 times pendulum.gravity over pendulum.size times the sine of pendulum.angle. Whoa, nice. So the pendulum.angle is going to start out at pi/2. So it should be kind of off to the side a little bit. And we're going to be updating it every time we call update pendulum angle. We're going to update it like this. We're going to say then pendulum. So we got the acceleration dot velocity. So the velocity is going to be an incrementally aggregated pendulum acceleration. So it's going to add every time through. We're going to add this acceleration. The acceleration will be fairly small, but it'll aggregate. Except that we're going to also pendulum.velocity. We're going to multiply this times equals pendulum.damping. So that's that 0.9995. That means it's a little bit less than 1, which means it'll be decreasing consistently. And we're going to say pendulum.angle is then going to be incrementing that by the pendulum.velocity. And let's just see if we get what we wanted. Not that. Not that. Oops. Update pendulum is not defined at draw. Update pendulum angle. So we're going to first update the angle. Look at that. So now we get a pendulum. Isn't that nice? And you can see it's moving pretty vigorously. One thing that I did with mine was I also pendulum.damping, because I like it when it starts out vigorously, but I want it to stop a little more quickly. So we can increment the damping, or decrement the damping, sorry, each time, and that means this 0.9995 is going to be moving. It's going to be it's almost like an exponential change to this. And there we go. So we stopped it pretty fast. Now, just like before with my circles, I want to leave y'all with a nice little challenge, which is see if you can make more than one pendulum. And you can take a look at my code. I don't think it should be too hard for you at this point. What might be kind of hard is to add sound. And since these have already been some longish videos, I'm gonna leave. Not gonna make you watch any more videos, but I did leave some links on the page to how to introduce to the P5 Sound API, and also this code is linked up there. You can see what I did was I added a synth to each pendulum, and then in my setup I used this create synth function to add a synth to each pendulum. And you can see, of course, I did pendulums array.from, create pendulum, passed in the I, and then modified each one using that I. And otherwise it looks, not too different from what we're seeing now. So good luck with that. And hope this was fun for you. And I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Have a nice night.